Hi, I'm Patty, and I'm here today to talk to you about some good basics about monogramming. I'm somebody who loves to monogram everything that I own, whether it's clothing that I wear, whether it's towels that I use in my house, or whether it's maybe even putting a vinyl decal on my car. So monogramming is something that I find is a really fun way to be able to personalize and to kind of customize items that you can buy. And so today we're going to kind of talk about some of the basic things and maybe some helpful tips about ways you can place monograms. So right now I have a couple things. I have a towel, and it's just a basic hand towel that you would find and you can buy at your local store. And I've got it hooped. And so we're going to be on the Pathfinder, and I'm going to show you, number one, like how I've got it hooped, and then also kind of give you some tips on how to even create your own monograms using the built-in fonts on some of our machines. So I've got this towel, I've got it hooped, and I'm using one of our new magnetic frames. So there's lots of options as far as how you can hoop your towels and that sort of thing, but sometimes towels can be hard to hoop in your traditional hoops. So a lot of people will float a towel, which means they'll use maybe a sticky stabilizer, and they'll float the topping and use a basting stitch on the machine to kind of hold those layers together. But this magnetic hoop does that for me. It actually holds all those layers together, and it's really easy to get my towel nice and flat with my layers of stabilizer, my towel, and then I'm using a wash away topping. So this towel's all ready and set up to be embroidered. One of the things I do like to do is you can either have the excess of your towel kind of landing over the embroidery arm or kind of towards the back of the machine. So you just don't kind of want all that bulk away from the center of your machine. Over on the Pathfinder, I'm going to show you just one of the ways that I'll create monograms. And a monogram is traditionally your three letters, right? It's the first name, last name, and then your middle name. And that's kind of the order that you'll see them traditionally placed. And you'll see the last name being a larger font size. So that's kind of how a monogram is traditionally laid out. Now, are there other ways that you can create monograms? Absolutely. There's stacked monograms. There's some that form circles or diamond shaped. So there's all sorts of monograms out there. On the Pathfinder, if I go into embroidery editing, I have a category here of built-in fonts. And when I select that category, you'll see that I have several different font types. So you can use these different font styles to create a monogram, like I talked about, where that center last name initial is larger. I'm going to choose this exclusive script font here. And within the Pathfinder and in several of our baby-like machines, we have the ability to add multiple lines of text. And this is kind of a fun way to be able to create a monogram. So I'm just going to use the initials ABC. So A being the first initial. I'm going to go ahead and make this be medium. And then I'll go ahead and do enter, which gives me a multiple line of text, and do the letter B, which would be my middle name initial. And then let's say I enter again for my third line of text and do my last name initial, which could be C. Okay, so I'm just using ABC as the example here. I can touch set, and now it brings those three letters onto the design page for me. So I'm on my embroidery editing page here, and I can move these around and make adjustments to them. So again, if this is my first name initial, this is my middle name initial, and this is my last name initial, I want to make this letter C much larger. So I can come here and use my size tool, and I can resize this, okay? And you can resize it to the point where you know the exact measurement of the size of that height, or you could come in and just look at how the letters look next to one another. So I'm going to go ahead and say close to this, and I'm happy with that size. Now I want this to be the center of my design. So I'm going to move this to the center of my design page by using these move keys here. If you have a machine, any of our machines that have these move keys, when you press the center button, it centers it to the design page. So I can center that C, but now you can see my B and my A are kind of covered. If I use my selection tools, select my letter B, I'm going to center that again, and then I'm going to move that over to the right. So there I'm getting my middle name initial is over on the right. I'm going to use the selection tools again, select the letter A, which is my first name initials, go back and center it, and then move that over to the left. Again, you can kind of decide if you feel like you need to move this further over to the left, or maybe make it, move the B over further or closer, however you want it to look. But just like that, I've created a really traditional monogram. So now that I'm ready to embroider, I can touch embroidery. And look what the machine is telling me. It's telling me change to a larger embroidery frame. So this is something that I can easily fix. Because I have my 5x7 hoop on, the machine is recognizing that and it's looking at this design size and seeing that it's 5.7 inches wide, which is wider than my 5x7 frame. I know this design can fit into this hoop, and I know that I'm going to orientate it and rotate it so that it's going to land on the towel the way I've got it hooped. So all I need to do, don't panic, is to remove my frame. So I'm just going to slide this frame off, and I'm going to be careful of the magnets as I'm moving this off to make sure it's clearing the foot. Now when I touch embroidery, because there's no frame on the machine, it's going to let me move to the next embroidery setting page. With this, now I can rotate this. And the reason why I want it to rotate on this page is because it will rotate everything grouped together. On the prior page, I would have had to rotate my C, position that in the center, and then rotate both my A and my B and again reposition them. So I'm going to rotate this here, and I can rotate it 90 degrees. Okay, now at this point, I can safely put my hoop back on. So I'm going to go ahead and place this back on, because what we want to do next is line this up. You may not have noticed earlier, but I did place a pin, just a straight pin, in the bottom center of my towel. That's kind of what I like to use as a good reference point, because it really helps me to know exactly where my center is. And because I'm using this water-soluble topping, it's challenging to try to mark on a towel. So this kind of gives me my bearings of where the center position is on my towel. Now I've got it rotated, so I can go ahead and say, close that out of the rotation. The next thing I want to do is I want to position this. And typically when I'm doing a hand towel or bath towel, if my towel has a band on it, I'll try to put that maybe an inch, inch and a half up from that band, okay? So right now my design is being positioned by the center of my design. So it's looking at this little crosshair here right in the middle of the letter C. Down here at the very bottom, I have a key here that will let me change my point of reference. So I can come here and select this one that looks like a needle with a little plus. And you'll notice here that I still have this same keypad that looked like my move keys, but it's a little different. So this is going to let me choose a different point of reference for my design. So if I'm saying I want to line it up by the bottom center, I can simply reference that by clicking this button. My needle moved, and now my crosshair is at the bottom of the letter C. So then what I can do is I can check and see, is that the right distance? Or I could get my tape measure out, or maybe mark that up before I even put that onto the machine and mark and see if it's the appropriate distance from the band. I'm okay with that, but if I wanted to, I could even come in here and maybe move that down just a little bit to get it positioned where I want it to go. So this little point of placement key here can be your friend and can give you other options for choosing, again, a reference point that you're going to be lining something up with on your overall design. Now I always go back and move it back to the center once I've kind of checked that and referenced it and touched close. So at this point, I'm pretty confident with my design. I am going to move it just a little bit over to the right because I did not check my centering. So I'm going to just move that down just a little bit. And again, I'm just kind of eyeballing it with my pin. Again, you could also move that pin and mark it here on the center of your topping as well. So at this point though, I am ready and I should be able to stitch out this design and add a monogram. All I need to do is get the machine threaded up with my color of choice. So as you can see, the machine stopped after the letter A. And although all of these are listed as the color black, they are reading as individual designs. So the machine's stopping to trim the thread and would have you just restart again. But on the Pathfinder, there is a button here that will let me sew in monochromatic. When I select that, it's gonna now eliminate those stops and just let me have continuous stitching for my design. So now it'll sew the letter B and C continuously. right, so my towel's all finished embroidering. I can come over to the machine and just say okay to the finished sewing message, and then take my hoop off the machine. And for this one, what you would want to do is you would want to take away any of the excess. I just usually tear away any of the excess water-soluble topping, and then I'll either use a little mister bottle or maybe a little towel with a little bit of water to get into those smaller areas of my letter. And then on the back here with the tear away, I again just used a tear away firm, so this should just tear straight away. Another great stabilizer to use when you're doing towels is a wash away tear away, which means that once you're done, you would tear everything away. But then when you wash your towels the next time, that stabilizer will disappear. So those are great options when you're doing towels. So that's what I would do. And then I'd have my towels all ready to go. Now on the machine here, if this is a monogram that you're going to use over and over, I would definitely come in and save this to the machine memory. So just save memory and either put it onto the machine memory, or again, you could store it onto your USB with all of your other designs. Now I mentioned I love to embroider hand towels. I love to embroider pillows, all sorts of things for home decor. But I also like to personalize a lot of my clothing. And so I brought some samples in here today just to show you some other things that you can embroider on. So one of the things that a lot of people like to do when they get embroidery machines is to, again, customize their garments. So I just brought in some t-shirts that I have embroidered in the past. And again, when you're placing a design like this, if it's your own personal garment, I highly encourage you to try the shirt on and kind of get an idea of where you want that to be placed. Everyone kind of has different body styles and things are going to hit you differently. But then what I usually do is I mark from the center and then again, kind of determine what the size of my monogram is and find a good spot for placement on that. Now, if you're doing something where you're maybe working with a lot of logos or you're wanting to do something on more of like a shirt that has a collar or a shirt that has buttons down the front. So this is just one of our Baby Lock logo shirts. But you'll see that this is something where, you want to make sure it's placed a certain way. Now, I will tell you that if you are really looking for some standards on where certain monograms go, I have gone out and searched on the internet, and there are several different resources out there that really are good that will tell you exactly where you might place a monogram on a men's cuff or how high above a pocket. So there's a lot of things out there that will help you with kind of guiding that. A lot of apparel companies that do monogramming on garments will kind of give you some best practices with where or how high you want to place something from the edge of a cuff or above a pocket, etc. But one of the tools that we have available that's also very helpful, and this is the child size, but we also have as an adult size, and this would be something you could reach out to your local Baby Lock retailer to see if they carry this in their store, but it's an embroidery placement ruler. So this is really nice because it gives you different sizes, and again, these sizes are all based on children's sizes, but you basically can use this with lining this up with the top shoulder edge of the garment, and then you would line this up with the center of your garment, and it gives you an actual little spot here that says put your placement mark here. So this is a great tool, again, if you're doing something repetitive. Maybe you're doing monograms on robes for a friend's wedding and you want to make sure that they're all in the same spot. This is a great tool to help you keep those types of things consistent, especially if if you're taking a picture, you want to make sure all of their monograms are all in a similar spot. But that's a great tool. And again, I'm one of those who the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get with where you think things should be placed. And so eventually you might even get to the point where you can kind of go, that's where it needs to go, and kind of eyeball it a little bit more than having to really get out a ruler and measure and be super, super precise with it. So those are just some examples. I do have some other things here that as you get more and more into embroidery and monogramming, and I kind of consider monogramming and personalization all the same. So whether it's a monogram or a name, you can get into doing some really fun things. Bags, little kids' clothing is also a great option. I monogram pretty much everything. So I have coats that have my monograms on it. I have all sorts of apparel that has my monogram on it. I even have shoes that have a monogram on it, but those I ordered online. So you can't necessarily do those on your machine without taking the shoes apart. But there's lots of things you can do to really kind of spruce up your wardrobe and your household with monogramming. For more inspiration, be sure to check out babylock.com.